Okay, welcome everyone. Just a bit of background for me, in case you don't know. My name is Darren. I work for Google. Specifically, I work on a bunch of things, right? But it's mostly around automation, BGP design, that kind of thing. And I just wanted to do a little bit of a talk on, bgp-stuff.net, which is the site I run, how it works, and yeah. Okay, so this really is the infrastructure. So it looks fairly complicated, but I'm going to go over all the parts in a bit. It's also a little bit complicated because it's really showing 4 different devices here because of my, resiliency that I require on this. So let's go over one at a time. So BGP 1 and BGP 3 are what I call my collectors. Those are the devices that I peer with multiple peering points, people all over the world. IPv4 and IPv6, this is just a multi-hop eBGP session. I receive all the prefixes they send me. I send them nothing, and that's it. BGP2 and BGP4 are the actual sites that I use to present. So pretty much when you go to bgp-stuff.net, you're actually hitting BGP4. BGP2 is my test site. You can also go to test.bgp-stuff.net if you desire, but just bear in mind, things are going to be broken there all the time. That's where I preview all my stuff. And yeah, I have a bunch of obviously moving parts here, as you can see. The reason is because it's kind of like each part was, done when I required a feature. I created the feature, and then, move on to the next one. So one of the things I wanted to make sure was that I have a database of stuff, right? It's where I keep all the information that I collect every 5 minutes or so. But I certainly did not want multiple applications all interacting with the database because, frankly, I don't want to have to program my SQL queries into every single program, right? So I have one daemon, simply called, say it. This is a theme that you'll see. I'm very bad at naming things. So BGP, the daemon that, connects my BGP stuff to SQL is really just called BGP-sql. You'll see that's a common thing that I'll have throughout. So this is the daemon that just sits and speaks to the database. And it receives queries from other daemons that I have and interacts with the database and then replies with that information to whoever is requesting it. The advantage now of this is, as you can see, all my other daemons, they speak just via gRPC to this daemon, and it does all the heavy lifting. So none of these devices need to know which database, what password. It just says, this is the information I require, or this is the information that's going to be updated. Give it back to me. So that's what BGP-sql does. Collector really is the thing that collects all my information. So every 5 minutes, this collector will do a bunch of processing, and it will speak directly with Bird, which is the BGP daemon I currently use. And it will get things like, what's the amount of IPv4 prefix in use? What's the amount of IPv6 prefixes in use? How many ASNs there are? How many, I'll even do things like how many /24s, how many /23s, how many /22s, and so on. So that's just a thing that runs every 5 minutes. Let's see if I can actually show how it works. The password, yeah. Okay. I'm not sure if you can see that. It's a little bit, obviously, because I had to increase the size, it's not looking very good. But yeah, it should be okay. Okay, so this actually just run. So all my servers on UTC. So this is 1710 UTC. This just ran a few seconds ago. Actually, let's see if I can go a little bit more. 1710. 1710 here. Okay, so that's 1705. So here we go. It starts over here. So it does a bunch of things. For example, how many IPv4, how many IPv6 prefixes? What is this good? Yeah, same thing. Get AS. So I also time them, right? So I can figure out how long these are all taking if I need any optimizations. I check BGP large communities, even though I actually don't present that anywhere, but I think it's interesting nonetheless. These are all the row checks. So how many row valid, invalid, unknowns there are. And then finally, this is the call to bgp-sql, where it sends this information, say, this is all the information, as you can see here, for example, SAS24 v4s were currently 495,794, and it sends this off to bgp-sql. So this, does this every 5 minutes, and bgp-sql stores this in the database. Now, as you can see, BGP1 and BGP3 do the same thing. The reason I have this is they don't speak to the same database, just in case there's some corruption somewhere. I want to make sure that I'm not corrupting both databases. Every night as well, these databases are backed up, and I think I keep the last 10 or so on a rotation. So just in case, because I have had in the past before where I have completely deleted some data by mistake. Anyway, once a day as well, there's another daemon. I think it runs at 2 o'clock in the morning or so. It fetches all the current AS name to ASN mappings, and it also sends that into BGP-sql. And again, this is useful for when we are querying on the looking glass as to what an AS number name is. This I actually take from, I believe it's bgp.pottery.net, and because he has a ASN mapping name there. Yeah, no, maybe not that one. ASNs here. Okay, not here. It's somewhere. I need to figure out where it is. And once a day, so it will do that, send it up to bgp-sql, which again speaks to the database. So the first part of actually sending this out to the outside world is I have another daemon. So this is GCP, so this runs in Google Cloud Compute, simply because I just wanted somewhere to run it. It doesn't really matter whether this was AWS or wherever. And this runs on a cron job to say, for example, every 6 hours, I tweet the table size. So what it will do is it will, again, send a gRPC query to bgp-sql saying, give me, for example, for the latest data, what I need to know is I need to know what is the latest count that I got and what was the count 6 hours ago. It will ask those two. It will send that back to Twitter. Twitter will obviously formulate a tweet, and then it speaks directly to Twitter API to say, send this out via BGP4 table or send this out via BGP6 table. Occasionally, I also send out graphs, for example, like this one. When this happens, I need to obviously need to get an image. This is the one location where I actually run Python still, because even though I mostly use Go, as you can see, all these yellow blocks are written in Go. Go doesn't really have great graphing libraries. I mean, they do have some, but none of them are as good as matplotlib, which is the library I use in Python. So Twitter will then send, again, by gRPC, send a request saying, this is the graph I need. For example, if it's this graph, obviously I need to know what's the total amount of prefixes and what are the total amount of unknown, valid, and invalid prefixes. Give me the data. Another graph obviously will be completely different information. For example, this is the weekly table movement. It will say, again, from bgp-sql, say, give me all the counts for the last week. It will then formulate what it needs, send it to the Twitter and say, graph this, send it back. Twitter will then send it back. Sorry, Grapher will then send the image back. Twitter will then again create a tweet, attach the image, attach any information I may want to that, and send it off to the Twitter API. Again, Twitter is run on a cron job. So, for example, it tweets every 6 hours, every single day. And then on certain days, for example, Mondays, I tweet the RPKI. On Wednesdays, I tweet, how much of the graphs are SAS24s or SAS23s, so basically the summit breakdown, and so on. And I can always add more features as I see fit. To actually get the RPKI data is an interesting one, because when I first started getting RPKI data, I was not plugged into any of the, I didn't have a connection to Ripe or any of that where I could actually get this information. So what I did was Cloudflare actually publish, and I believe they update it every 5 minutes. They publish a JSON of all the current rows that are signed. Now, obviously, I can't use that directly. So what I do is this daemon over here, it takes that, and I believe I only pull it every 15 minutes because I'm not filtering based on this, 15 minutes is perfectly fine. I take the JSON data, I deconstruct it into objects inside it, the Go application, and it runs RPKI RTR protocol directly, and it's got a session with all my BGP daemons here. This is extremely low overhead because it means I don't really have to, worry about any of the, connecting to any of these locations directly to work out all this information. I'm getting Cloudflare to do the heavy lifting of working out what rows are active and which are not. And all this is doing is really just speaking the RPKI RTR protocol to send it directly to these daemons, which know how to use that. Okay, finally, the actual bgpstuff.net web interface itself. So the web interface is actually just a very small application, again, written in Go, but it doesn't actually have any of the, it doesn't have any state at all, right? Glass is really the daemon that has all the state. So Glass is another gRPC daemon, and it takes all the requests from GlassWeb, and it will go to the correct place where it needs to. For example, if you want to see the route for a particular IP address you passed in, it just speaks directly to bird, the local bird instance. However, if you want to get the AS name, for example, for a particular AS number, Glass will speak to the SQL daemon, which will get that information from the database. Again, this is why I get it. So if I had to go out to externally to get this would be really slow. But because it's a local connection to the database, it's super quick. And again, this is updated once a day. The reason I do it this way is that actually, again, this is just a web interface to the Glass daemon, but technically I could actually expose this Glass daemon directly by gRPC, and you can kind of get the same information. It's just you would obviously need to know, how the protocol is set up. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. As you can see, all the yellows are in Go. This is the only Python application still remaining. The vast majority of my apps use gRPC to speak to each other. The only external, well, actually, there's actually another external API, which I haven't added here, and that is when you check location. So if I click here, this gives me an image. This is actually from the Google Maps API. So what happens here is, so every request that comes in, it doesn't go directly to the server. Everything is fronted through Cloudflare. And Cloudflare, there may just be an anti-DOS thing mostly, but actually, or CDN, but they give a lot of interesting information in the header as well. So when a packet comes in and they send it off to you, in the header of the HTTP request, you can see the original IP address of the user. You can see the location at which they ingressed. For example, they will actually tell you the data center region in which the packet ingressed on their network. And you can get that very easily. So you can just say, give me the data center, right? This is why a few people have asked me like, hey, I may live in the Netherlands and I'm opening up where am I, and it's telling me I'm in London. The reason that is well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one is that either your ISP just has really shitty peering and you just happen to be connecting, the closest route happens to be through London, or the fact is that I'm on Cloudflare's free program, and when you're on the free program, they don't advertise reachability to your site from every single peering point of theirs. So this is why you sometimes get to a slightly far one. But the advantage of this is that when a request comes in, it shows you the airport code of where the requests come in. For example, when I visit, the closest airport to me is IAT, which is here somewhere. And then I submit a request to the Google Maps API to say, get me a map centered on IAT, and this is the size, and it will send it back. Now, because I may be refreshing the page, or multiple people where I am may be coming here, I make sure that I do not, I don't request I don't submit a request to the Google Maps API on every request. Every request, basically, I have a cache. So this image now is currently sitting in the class cache, this daemon here. And I believe, different queries have different cache times. For example, I believe this image is cached for a full day because there's no point. I mean, this image is not going to change, in weeks, months, right? So it doesn't really matter. But other queries, like if you do a show route, I believe I cache it for 1 minute. So if you do it, if it changed in the background and you did it again, you probably see after about a minute it will change, right? If the route changed. Other things like row data, I think I update the cache every 15 minutes. So what will happen is a request will come in, it checks the local cache. If there's a cache entry there, it then checks the age of the cache entry. If it's older than the timers that I've set, it will then just ignore it and pull the data directly from here or here, update the cache, send the result, the response, meaning that again, if you check it within 10 seconds, it will just give an immediate response back. So you can kind of see that when I click this link here, for example, you'll see when I click source, the very first time, it takes a while, right? And I believe I've got a timer down here, 1.17 seconds. But if I refreshed, it should be much quicker because this result comes from the cache, so 5 milliseconds, much quicker. And I believe sourced, I don't know what my time is on sourced. In fact, I can check here because it's all in the cache here. So where is my cache? Server again. I'm sure I got cache here. I don't know why. Oh wait, it's the wrong location. Oops. This is why I should prepare more often, right? Or maybe I haven't added it yet. So anyway, I've got a cache.go, but I believe I haven't actually updated it here. So yeah, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I can obviously go into much more detail on any particular part if anyone wants to, but yeah, are there any questions?